Elias was a cartographer of the forgotten, a surveyor of silence. His work wasn't about charting new highways or bustling cityscapes, but about rendering the negative space on a map, the vast, unpeopled swaths of wilderness where roads became animal trails and towns became ghost stories. His latest commission was a legend whispered among the locals of the high mountain passes, the Quiet Valley. It was a place rumored to have been abandoned for generations, its name a testament to the fact that no birds sang there, no wind rustled the leaves, and no animal cries echoed through the pines. No one had successfully mapped its interior, and the few who had tried came back changed, their minds foggy and their eyes wide with an unseen terror. Elias, a man of empirical truths and steady hands, dismissed their tales as folklore, the romantic imaginings of a superstitious people. He began his descent into the valley with the methodical precision of a man who trusted his tools more than his intuition. The air grew still as he went, the vibrant sounds of the forest fading behind him as if a great, invisible door had closed. The chirping of crickets, the rustling of squirrels, the distant call of a hawk, all of it was extinguished. The silence was not the absence of sound, but a tangible presence, a pressure on the eardrums that felt heavy and suffocating. The pines, once standing straight and tall, began to lean inward, their canopies forming a dark, interlocking vault that swallowed the sun. The ground beneath his feet, once firm with packed earth and pine needles, became spongy and damp, as if it had not seen sunlight in a century. Hours passed. The oppressive silence was broken only by the crunch of his boots and the rhythmic creak of his pack straps. His meticulously calibrated compass began to spin erratically, the needle fluttering like a trapped butterfly before settling on a random, useless direction. He checked his GPS, but the screen displayed only a jumbled mess of static, a digital surrender to an unseen interference. He put the devices away, a flicker of unease in his chest, and relied on his old-fashioned methods. A large-format sketchbook, charcoal, and an internal sense of direction honed by years in the wild. Late in the afternoon, he found the cabin. It was a ruin of grayed wood and sagging roof lines, half swallowed by the encroaching overgrowth. A rusted axe was embedded in a stump outside, a forgotten promise of labor. The door, unlatched, groaned open on unseen hinges as he pushed it. Inside, the cabin was a tomb of dust and decay, the air thick with the smell of rot and damp earth. His flashlight beam cut a path through the gloom, illuminating a space frozen in time. A single chair, carved from a solid log, sat before a soot-blackened hearth. On a rickety table, an empty bottle stood next to a forgotten tin cup. It was the walls that drew his attention. They were covered in intricate carvings that pulsed faintly in the beam of his light. Elias had seen his share of amateur carvings, names, dates, crude animals, but these were different. They were not etched with a blade or a tool. They were as smooth as polished stone and felt warm to the touch. They were not drawings of objects, but of ideas, geometric patterns that intertwined with forms that resembled biological structures, like veins or roots or nerve clusters. They seemed to possess a life of their own, shifting and breathing with a subtle internal light that made them glow softly in the dark. He touched one, a spiral of repeating hexagons, and felt a vibration beneath his fingertips, a soft, low thrum that sent a shiver up his arm. It was a vibration that seemed to match the silent pressure in the air. He moved from wall to wall, tracing the patterns with his eyes. On the floor, a single, smooth stone was covered in a miniature version of the same carving. He knelt down, running his hand over it. It was cold, unlike the walls. He felt something else, a new feeling he couldn't quite place. It was like a memory, but not his own. It was a feeling of deep, profound sadness, a crushing weight of solitude and longing that was so intense it made his throat ache. He pulled his hand away and sat on the floor, his back against the cool wall, trying to make sense of the new presence in his mind. Elias spent the night in his tent a few hundred yards from the cabin. Sleep came fitfully, his dreams filled with the pulsating, intricate shapes from the cabin walls. They morphed and writhed, becoming impossible geometries that defied the laws of space and time. He woke in a cold sweat, the silence of the valley now feeling less like a void and more like an attentive listener. Over the next few days, Elias began his survey. He found that his trusty measuring tools were useless here. Distances seemed to stretch and contract. What should have been a 100-yard walk to a creek would take him minutes, only for him to arrive at a different stream entirely, one that wasn't on his hand-drawn map. The trees themselves seemed to be rearranging their position, their gnarled branches reaching for him as he passed. He would turn his back for a moment, and a familiar stone he had marked would be gone, replaced by a moss-covered log. And then the carvings began to appear. First on a smooth river rock, a faint, translucent spiral. Then on the side of a great, ancient pine, a hexagonal pattern that glowed with a soft, bioluminescent light. They were everywhere now, not etched into the world, but manifesting from it, like a fungal growth or a strange new species of lichen. He saw them on the underside of a fallen leaf, in the condensation on his tent walls, and even fleetingly in the pattern of his own shadow. The pressure in the air intensified. It no longer felt like a silence, but like a sustained note, a low hum that resonated in the very core of his bones. He was convinced he was no longer alone. He could feel it now, an unseen entity moving just at the periphery of his vision. He would catch a flicker of movement from the corner of his eye, a distortion in the air, a ripple in the fabric of reality that was not caused by heat or moisture. The feeling of profound sadness from the cabin returned, but now it was laced with a chilling, boundless hunger. Elias knew, with an absolute certainty that transcended logic, that he was being watched, studied, and observed. Driven by a building panic he couldn't control, he packed his bag. He had to leave. He retraced his steps, following his mental map, but the path was gone. He walked for what felt like hours, trying to find his way out of the winding, twisting labyrinth of trees and rocks, only to find himself back at the ruins of the cabin, the pulsating carvings on the walls seeming to mock his futility. He turned, a low, guttural sound escaping his throat, and saw it. It was not a creature or a monster, but a tear in the air itself, a shimmering void that held no shape. It was a flicker of negative space, an absence of light that had the vague outline of something impossibly tall and impossibly thin. The patterns from the walls of the cabin pulsed on its surface, a shifting, living tapestry of impossible geometries. It hung there, a few feet from the ground, a beacon of pure, concentrated dread. Elias fell to his knees, his hands trembling, his mind unraveling at the sight of this impossible thing. He felt a wave of profound loneliness wash over him, and a silent, terrible understanding. It was not here to haunt, it was here to feed. The hunger was a vacuum, a psychic black hole that pulled at the edges of his consciousness. As he watched the shimmering void, it seemed to expand, its impossible geometry spreading across the air like oil on water. It didn't move, yet it was closer. He felt it now not just as a sensation, but as a deliberate probe, a tendril of pure emptiness slipping into the corners of his mind. A memory flashed before his eyes unbidden. It was of a small cabin, not this one, but a different one from his childhood. He was a boy, laughing with his father as they whittled a bird from a block of wood. The memory was bright, warm, and comforting. And then a shuddering wave of profound grief washed over him, a sense of loss so potent it brought tears to his eyes. But the memory was not his anymore. It was dull, the colors faded, the laughter muffled and hollow. The feeling of grief was not his own, but something foreign, a residue left behind after the entity had taken the joy. He stumbled to his feet, a guttural cry of fear and outrage trapped in his throat. It was feeding on his emotional connections, on the very fabric of his past. The sadness he had felt in the cabin wasn't an echo of a previous victim, but the remains of their stolen life. He looked at the axe embedded in the stump, once a symbol of labor, now a relic of a life that had been consumed. The empty bottle and tin cup in the cabin were not just forgotten items, but what was left after a moment of camaraderie had been devoured. He realized the valley wasn't quiet because of a lack of sound. It was quiet because every memory, every feeling, Every echo of a human connection had been stripped away. The entity shifted, its outline wavering like a mirage. It was moving closer, slowly, deliberately. It was a predator in a psychological sense, not a physical one. It stalked the mind, not the body. A new memory came, this one of his mother's smile. It was a beautiful, clear image, full of love. A moment later, it was gone, leaving behind a cold, crushing weight of despair. The entity had consumed it, leaving him with only the emotional aftertaste of its feasting. Panic became a raw, primal scream in his head. He had to fight back. But how do you fight a void? How do you map an absence? Elias, the man of facts and reason, knew this was a war he couldn't win with a compass or a GPS. He needed a new kind of map, a new way to measure. He looked.